Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Justice, thank you very much for coming along this evening. I'm Brian Sheehan from GLEN, Gay and Lesbian Equality Network, and on behalf of myself and Walter J. Wardina from the ICCL, we're delighted to be here this evening, delighted to be in the presence of the Chief Justice and in the very historic forecourts for an event which I think marks yet another very successful year of progress for lesbian, gay and bisexual people in Ireland, and it's a real thrill to be here, and it's a real thrill to be at the end of the year having an event like this. I'd like to say a very special welcome to Catherine Dolan, who's the CEO of Thomson Reuters, who are the publishers of Fergus's book for lawyers. What we affectionately in the office call the Know Your Rights book, this one, which is the Civil Rights Civil Partnership Act for Humans, and the other one is the one for lawyers. And Catherine is responsible for working with Fergus on that one. I'd also like to say a very special welcome to Fergus's mum, Catherine Ryan. We know Fergus a long time, and he's been a huge stalwart and asset to GLEN and to very many lesbian and gay organisations, and we're terribly proud of him, and I'm quite sure you are too. So thank you very much for being with us this evening. Our proceedings are fairly short. We will have some short words from Dr Fergus Ryan himself, from Mark Ryan, who's the Director of the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, and from Kieran Rose, who's the Chair of the Board of GLEN, and followed by remarks from the Chief Justice, the Honourable Miss Justice Susan Denham. So without further ado, can I introduce you to Dr Fergus Ryan?
Thank you, Brian. Chief Justice, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank you all very sincerely for coming here this evening to mark this launch. I know it's a very busy time of the year, and I very much appreciate your joining us here in these very auspicious surroundings. It is in particular a great honour and privilege to have the Honourable Mrs Justice Susan Denham, Chief Justice, officially to launch the Know Your Rights Pack and the Civil Partnership Annotation. The overlords of austerity will be pleased to see that we are being very efficient tonight in launching not one but two publications. Both address a common theme, namely the implications of the recently enacted Civil Partnership and Certain Rights and Obligations of Cohabitants Act of 2010. I think to appreciate fully the impact of this groundbreaking measure, one must first contemplate the legal position of same-sex couples before 2011. Before the Act came into force, the legal position of couples outside of same-sex couples, of cohabiting same-sex couples, was quite precarious from a legal point of view. Before the Act came into force, cohabiting same-sex couples had next to no rights or obligations in respect to the relationship, regardless of its duration. The very few entitlements afforded to non-marital unions were often exclusively applied to opposite-sex couples, and same-sex couples were very often excluded from protection. Indeed, prior to 2011, one could say virtually everything that needed to be said about same-sex couples and the law in a very few pages. In this respect, the 2010 Act and accompanying legislation have radically changed the legal landscape. The rights and obligations attached to civil partnership in particular are very extensive and significant. Civil partnership confers extensive recognition across a comprehensive range of areas such as succession, pensions, taxation, social welfare, citizenship, immigration, property, maintenance and remedies on dissolution. The entitlements and obligations are in most cases equal or substantially equivalent to those afforded to married couples. Changes to equality legislation mean that civil partners must be treated the same as spouses in employment and in the provision of goods and services. There are certainly gaps in protection that remain, but we will likely see reform in the near future, particularly in relation to the main outstanding area, which relates to children being parented by same-sex couples. The Act also introduced important, though less extensive, protections for cohabitants. These apply to opposite-sex and same-sex partners living together outside of marriage and civil partnership. Possibly we're talking here about as many as 143,000 couples. The Act creates in particular a vital safety net for long-term qualified cohabitants who find themselves in a financially vulnerable position following relationship breakdown. Notably, the Oireachtas has equalised the position of same-sex and opposite-sex couples cohabiting outside of marriage and civil partnership in a variety of areas, including social welfare, domestic violence, residential tenancies and wrongful death suits. Now, I hope I don't date myself too much when I say that I first studied family law in 1993 under the very inspiring tuition of Professor William Duncan, and at that time such developments in relationship recognition really seemed a very long way off. We were discussing at that time whether or not divorce should be introduced. Decriminalisation had only just been achieved, and it was only in 1993 that the legislature made it unlawful to dismiss a person from employment on the basis of their sexual orientation. So if you go back to Christmas 1992, it was still illegal to engage in homosexual sexual activity between males. It was still possible to be dismissed from employment this time 20 years ago on the basis of being gay or lesbian. It is through the efforts of a great many brave and determined people, including amongst others members of the ICCL and GLEN, that such changes have come to pass in what, in terms of law reform certainly, has been a comparatively short period of time. Yet in many respects, I think these changes in relationship recognition affirm values that were always well rooted in Irish society. The many couples who have entered into civil partnership at home and abroad attest to the profound aspiration for long-term commitment within a loving, stable union. In doing so, same-sex couples reaffirm in modern garb long-standing values that prioritise mutual support, the value of family, continuity and intense commitment in the value of belonging. The breadth of this Act and its very extensive and complex provisions make it, I think, vital that publications like the Know Your Rights Pack are widely available. A particular strength of this joint ICCL-GLEN publication is the plain English editing process that it underwent, spearheaded by the National Adult Literacy Agency. And I wanted to thank in particular the staff of NALA and Sandra Burke for their collaboration in what to my mind has been a very fruitful process, ensuring that the text is as accessible and clear as possible. I also appreciate the very invaluable input and expert scrutiny of Brian Sheehan, Mark Kelly, Owen Collins, Muriel Walls, Hilke Becker and Catherine Cosgrave. And I would particularly like to thank and pay tribute to Walter Jaiwardena of the ICCL for his expert and exceptional stewardship as editor of the Know Your Rights Pack. Walt was thorough and conscientious with a very keen eye for detail and nuance that I found personally really invaluable. It was an honour to work with the ICCL and GLEN, and particularly Walt, in relation to this text. Now, the Civil Partnership Annotation, which is the second publication being launched tonight, started life as an entry to the Irish Current Law Statutes Annotated, which is published by Roundhall and edited by Professor Robert Clark. This publication provides a comprehensive review and analysis of each year's legislative innovations, and it was from that Current Law Statutes Annotated that this publication is drawn. And I was delighted and honoured when Roundhall proposed publishing it also as a separate text. It is, I think, a mark of the significance again of the 2010 Act that Roundhall chose to publish this annotation as an off-print, making it available to a much wider audience. I thank them very sincerely for this opportunity to provide what I hope is a useful and informative guide for practitioners. Very especially I wanted to thank Martin McCann, the editor, Frida Donoghue, Maura Smith and Catherine Dolan, and all the staff at Thomson Reuters and Roundhall for their exceptional professionalism, support and patience in relation to this text. I would also like to thank my colleagues at DIT, and in particular my head of department, Bruce Carlin, who's here today, for their collegiality and friendship. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my parents, my mum and Cormac, who are here, and my family and my partner Jose, who can't be here today, for their continued support and encouragement. Míle bhuíochas agus grá críliv galéir. And thank you again for coming here to have a very happy Christmas. And I hope you find both texts useful. Thank you.